We're going to talk to Edgar Harwood. He is running for the state house in Utah in the 38th district. Edgar, welcome to Rebel headquarters. How you doing, brother?
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. So tell us about the guy who holds the seat and what a swell guy he is.
Well, our incumbent's name is Eric Hutchings, and Eric, he was originally a Democrat when he was appointed to the state house, and he immediately switched over to Republican Party and has been running as a Republican ever since. He's a pretty reliably Republican vote. He seems to like to walk the sort of moderate line because we are in a Democratic-based district. But he's managed to hold on the seat thus far. The really troubling thing he did in the most recent session in 2016 was he was the only dissenting vote for repealing Utah's no promo homo law. So I was a little bit concerned about that.
So for those of us who don't live in Utah, what is this law that sounds incredibly disturbing? What no promo homo? What is that?
Well, so Utah used to have a law on the books that was about seeking to prohibit the so-called promotion of homosexuality in schools. Lots of red states have enacted similar policies. In 2016, thankfully, our legislature had the good sense to repeal that legislation, but my opponent was the only person who voted against repealing it. So I don't know why he did that, but I find that somewhat troubling.
No, I would find it deeply troubling. Maybe it's because he's a MAGA guy and Trump loves Putin and Putin has the same law that he passed in Russia. I don't know. The Republican Party's kind of lost its mind, so you never know what they're thinking. So is your district, I mean, you said Democratic base. So what's the makeup of your district?
We live in a working class community. We don't have a big, huge base of millionaires. Our district is working class people. We have one of the most diverse districts in Utah. And so unfortunately with that, we see a lot of the issues that are intrinsically tied to working class communities. We have poor academic outcomes. We have, and because, poverty is intrinsically tied to race in this country, unfortunately. We see that this diverse community often gets left behind when it comes to, like I said, education funding and just infrastructure and pretty much any sort of major concern. The west side of Salt Lake County just seems to get put out to the side, while the east side, the wealthy communities, have very strong representation in our legislature and are doing fantastically well. So we need somebody in our legislature who knows what it's like to have to get up in the morning and go to work, somebody who has a sense of compassion and empathy for their fellow man and wants to bring real progress for working families in Utah. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Edgar, are you trying to get us to believe that the rich in your district are better represented than the middle class and the poor?
Well, I know that might sound incredibly surprising, being that we live in a Republican supermajority state. But, the reality is that we have a lot of lower income people in our community. We have some of the worst ranked public schools in the state in our district. And we need somebody who wants to think about working people, who wants to think about everyday men and women, everyday Utahns who have to get up and produce for their families. And every day, as you and I both know, that's just becoming harder. Minimum wage doesn't cut it. Here in Utah, the living wage is $14 or $15 an hour at least, and that's still that's still struggling for a lot of families here.
Yeah.
So we need reform, and we need it now.
Part of the reason I like these interviews is because I learn something every day. For example, I learned in this interview that there are apparently minorities in Utah. Who knew?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about two things on your platform that I find different, because like most progressives, you're for campaign finance reform, bless your heart on that, strengthening public education, standing up for working families, etc. You have air quality on there. Why? What's going on with air quality in your district?
Well, okay, Utah in general has amongst the worst air quality in the nation frequently. We have very poor air quality. And recently, some reporting has come out from the Salt Lake Tribune saying that maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people annually are dying prematurely in Utah because of our air quality. So that's something that needs to be addressed. And when your governor has at the Republican convention a 20-foot tall pillar with a block of coal on top of it, you need somebody resisting that movement.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I was most surprised by when I went to Salt Lake City was how bad the pollution was. Because you have a sense, if you don't live in Utah, of like Utah being like open skies and beautiful and clean air. No, the mountains capture the pollution and trap it in Salt Lake City. So it's actually, unfortunately, one of the most polluted cities in America in that sense.
Absolutely.
All right, one last thing, medical cannabis. Is that a difference between you and your opponent?
Well, here's what my concern is in general. And I haven't spoken to my opponent one-on-one about medical cannabis, but there seems to be this sort of urge in the political establishment in Utah to undermine democracy. I don't know if you know this or not, but for the sake of your viewers, medical cannabis is actually on the ballot in Utah in November. And if it passes during the session, they've already tried to pass laws that would delay its implementation. They've tried to pass laws that would allow them to sort of review the legislation before it's actually fully implemented. So we have the Republican majority has tried really hard to undermine some of these ballot initiatives and in by extension undermine democracy, in my opinion. So we definitely need somebody up there who's going to protect, because right now 75% of Utahns, believe it or not, are in favor of medical cannabis. So if that passes, we need somebody that's going to protect those laws, not somebody who's going to find a way to erode them or to undermine them.
That's right. When they go low, we get high. No, I'm kidding. Medical cannabis is super important, likely to pass in Utah. It's very popular, as it is all across the country. But Edgar's right. Oftentimes, even if it passes in a ballot initiative, the politicians and the establishment try to undermine it. So I want everybody to know your website, hardwoodforhouse.com, hardwoodforhouse.com. Do people come to your website thinking that perhaps you're going to lay down hardwood for their houses?
You know what? I hope not. I guess if somebody was misspelling hardwood for house, they could end up there. Hopefully they live in Utah if they do.
Yeah, you never know, all right?
Yeah.
Anyway, check out the links below, guys. If you're watching later on YouTube or Facebook, you can just click on them and find out, go to your website, find out. Maybe there's also hardwood as well. So I'm trying to get everybody to go to your website. Okay, Edgar, thank you, brother. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Good luck.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Yep, and bring the fight to Utah. I love it. Thank you.